show, and I'm glad that you have once again joined me as we talk about life. And I always call it Life 360. You know, the pie, there's three big pieces. There's the clinical piece, how we feel, and what's going on with anxiety and fear and stress, and lions and tigers and bears and all that stuff. And then there's the relationship piece of the pie. We all have a lot of those. Sometimes those can be difficult. And then there's your performance life, your dreams and goals. And we talk about all of that on this program. And we do it in a fun way because basically it's not just me, it's you. You get to call and I get to talk to you. 844-940-2774 is the number to get on the program. You can call in. I would suggest quickly because it sort of fills up pretty quickly. 844-940-2774. 844-940-2774 to get on the show. And we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, provided it's something I know something about. But before we hop into it with a heavy heart, it's just many of you know I lived in LA for decades, and I was just there actually last week on Monday. The fires started on Tuesday, and so many friends. I've been for the past week in touch with so many of people there, and groups that are helping, and friends and neighbors and loved ones and friends of loved ones who've lost their homes, lost many of them lost everything, and it is it, there's no way to describe it. I have had a lot of people sending me, video clips of their neighborhoods and walking down the street and where their house was, um, and just the displacement of life. Um, Kids not having a place to go for school, and on and on and on. It's horrible. So I wanted to start with saying my heart continues to go out to all of you who've been affected. And also, I wanted to give a shout out. My old church there, Vintage Church LA, is in Santa Monica, and they are still standing and they are doing a lot of great things to help people. If you go to vintagechurchla.com, you'll see their website, and there's a big button there, I think. Telling you how you can help. People need a lot of stuff right now. And so, any way that we can help, um, then I encourage you, that's a good one to reach out to, as well as, there's lots of agencies that you can find online. But if all of us could come alongside the people of LA and the LA area in this time, it helps to bear one another's burdens. Okay. Um, what else about details that I need to give out? The number 844-940-2774 to get on the program, 844-940-2774. And if you've ever listened to the show before, what I do is in the beginning, I just kind of talk about some piece of content or an idea or something that might be helpful, hopefully, while you're calling in. And we were talking before the show. Obviously, our production team and my internal team for Boundaries.me, we talk about topics all the time. And one of them that um, that we thought it would be good to talk about is this. I don't know exactly what to call it. You know the concept. The concept is things get accomplished little by little, usually not all or nothing, usually not in a day. Anything that gets accomplished in a day, what is that? Other than if it's good, probably was an act of God. If it was anything else, it's probably a fantasy. But it is our bent to want to have things of value quickly, and we want to have them all. And we tend to think of, all or nothing, all or nothing kinds of ways of looking at everything. You know, if somebody's got to lose 50 pounds, New Year's resolution, which we're not too far away from, um, they're going to start and work hard on January 1 and 2 and hop on scales on January 3. They might not see any movement at all. In fact, it might have gone the other way if just enough water stays in the body. But that doesn't mean nothing's happening. Okay. And that is the key thing about people that accomplish things in life. And I want to give you, let's go back to the pie of life here. Okay. The clinical piece, which is overcoming depression, anxiety, fears, phobias, all of that kind of stuff, stress, energy levels, PTSD, all of it. I've been around dealing with that for lots of decades now, and I have seen lots and lots and lots of it healed. So encouraging to know. Um, it's reality. People can heal over depression, anxiety, panic disorders, eating disorders, addictions, all this stuff. But I tell you, I've never seen it done in one step. No 1-800, it's over, I'm well. I mean, I have seen miracles in certain instances where God does something, and I can encourage you to pray for all that. But, you know, even in my book, Why I Believe, when I was going through, um, as I chronicle in that book, it's called Why I Believe. If you want to hear my story, I hit the bottom, very depressed. And one of the things I learned about God was God stepped in and did some actual supernatural things. You can read about them in the book. There are lots of miracles in there, things that I have seen, things I have experienced, and things that I I cannot deny. And in that period, when I was really, really depressed, God did some supernatural things. And one of the things I write about that I learned early was, and I was still depressed. I wasn't out of it yet. And yet I saw him and his hand moving. And yet he wasn't healing me of the depression. But then he led me through some things that I had to do a lot of incremental steps of changing and growing and healing to finally come out of it. Haven't been depressed since. It was bad, but it was incremental. And the reason was growth takes time. Healing takes time. And one of the biggest fallacies that you'll ever hear a lot of times is, well, time heals all things. No, it doesn't. No. Try saying that to somebody with an abscessed tooth. Well, just give it a couple of weeks or gangrene in your finger or something. Yeah, just give it more time. No, time is going to be an ingredient, but so are some other healing agencies, right? There's grace and support and love and care, and there's teaching and there's structure and there's taking steps and there's discipline and there's correction and there's a bunch of things. You know, you make a you make a soup, you put it on what do you call those things? The stove. Actually, this is another topic. I made chicken soup and filmed it because my wife makes the best chicken noodle soup in the world. And I said, I'm gonna learn how to do this and prove to all the husbands and boyfriends out there, even if you're an idiot cook like me, you can do this. And I did it. And if we get, I tell you what, go to go to the boundaries.me website and if I get enough requests for my video chronicling of me giving you the video recipe to cook chicken noodle soup, then I will post it. But I'm not going to bother anybody if we don't get a lot of. So anyway, you put it all in the pot, and what do? You turn it on, and yeah, it's going to take however long it takes to cook. But it wasn't just the time that did it. There had to be some stuff put in there as well. And the ingredients is that time is going to be a part of, but it takes more than that. Well, the thing about time, though, is what I wanted to emphasize here is that it's all of this growth stuff. It's not one step, it's incremental, little bitty steps over time. I was just reading in Proverbs this morning. Today is the 13th, so I know what I was reading. It was chapter 13 in Proverbs. I always read the chapter of the day of the date of the month. And it was talking about ill-gotten gains versus the person who makes money grow little by little over time will do fine. And that's what you do, a penny and another penny and another penny and another penny, and it starts to compound. Well, that's true in terms of getting over your depression, getting over your anxiety, making your marriage better, raising a great kid, all of that. They're incremental little steps. So I want to give you a couple of principles about that. By the way, here's the number 844-940-2774, 844-940-2774. In the beginning, when you are working on something, here's principle number one. You've got to define what the steps are going to be. Okay, so if New Year's resolutions, you're going to lose weight. Well, there's got to be certain activities. You're going to walk your 10,000 steps a day. You're going to do A, B, and C, whatever it is. And the first thing is, we can't know if time is working or not unless we've defined the steps. I want you to do that first. But then the second principle is this. It will be many, 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 many of those little steps in the beginning that look like nothing is happening. Okay. If you are increasing the heat on a pot on the stove with ice cubes in it, and you're increasing it by 1 degree, you're not going to see anything, but you keep increasing it a little bit, and pretty soon you're going to do something, and then you're going to hit critical mass. And then you're really going to see something. You get compounded interest. So don't be discouraged when you're working on something that in the beginning, nothing seems like it's changing. If you're doing the right things, it will. Secondly, you're going to hit a crash in motivation because in the beginning of starting to change anything, you're all motivated and you start, and then you go through this lull, and then you kind of the motivation begins to wane. And that's the key place where people drop off thinking nothing's working or whatever. You've got to make sure at that moment that you keep doing the incremental steps, generally by outside support and having some sort of structure, sort of coach or a mentor or a buddy system does for you. But do not let the fall down of that initial wearing off of the motivation to tell you something goofy in your head like this isn't working. Okay. You cannot let motivation be your driver because motivation wanes. We know that. It's a commitment to a structure to keep doing the incremental steps. Now, here's a problem. Number three, if we're at number three now, you cannot measure you cannot measure the effectiveness of what you're doing against the goal. You can't measure it against the goal. In other words, let me give you an example. I saw on Instagram this morning of Charlie Woods and Tiger Woods. You know, Charlie's Tiger's son, and he's playing now, and they're playing tournaments together. And it showed their swings, on two frames right next to each other. And dad gummit, now you can't tell the difference. I mean, I don't know, was Charlie 15 or 16 now? Something like that. I don't know his exact age. But it's unbelievable how much he looks like Tiger hitting a golf shot. Well, I remember back when I first started watching him several years ago, where, yeah, you could kind of tell he was in the Tiger style, but it wasn't like it is now. But I guarantee you, what they did was over these past handful of years, every day, little bitty steps. As Tiger says, you got to dig it out in the dirt, meaning you got to go to the practice range and work on it shot by 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 shot. And now it's unbelievable. But if he had measured himself then against looking at Tiger, which he looks like now, much more than he did then. But if he had looked at Tiger and looked at me, oh, well, I'll never make it. The gap is too big. So you can't, if you're going to lose 50 pounds, you can't measure yourself looking on there to see how close you are to the goal in day one. You got to measure yourself against, am I doing the incremental steps or not? That's what you've got to measure yourself against. Was today a success? Did I do A, B, C, and D, the things I said I was going to do? And that's how you measure it. So, anyway, don't want to harp on this forever. I've written uh, a lot on this. In fact, if you're a boundaries.me member, oh gosh, we have a whole couple of long form webinars, 2 hour webinars. Go to boundaries.me, and those are under the premium workshops about resolutions and all of that. And in the general courses sections, there's a lot on there. Um, very, very important. Nobody ever accomplished anything easily or quickly of value. But here's one more example. I was listening, saw a clip come up on one of the platforms yesterday, Michael Phelps, who was talking about, how many gold medals did he win? I don't even know if they can count them. But um, he said the difference in people that are really good and the people that are really great, that difference, and this is true. He said the people that are great, they're just willing to do the things that the other people aren't willing to do. The little boring incremental attention to details and pushing a little further and doing this and doing that. It's the little things done over and over and over and over and over again that end up being big things. Okay, so let's talk here. Call me 844-940-2774. And before we do that, I want to go to some of the write-in questions here. And while your calls are coming in, 844-940-2774 is the number. And let me go to a write-in, see what they are here. Well, I can, there. Um, it says here, I have been trying to make some positive changes in my health and overall wellness, and my family isn't supportive. They say that I'm spending too much time on myself. What can I do? Um, well, there's a proverb that says, you hear one side of a story, and then it sounds good, and then another person comes along from the other side, and it doesn't sound like you had the whole picture. And so it's very difficult knowing. I'm just going to read this to you. You've been trying to take some positive changes in my health and overall wellness, and my family is supportive. They say I'm spending too much time on myself. Well, um, I don't know, but I know what you can do. Here's what you can do. I think you have to look at your your life uh, sort of like a bunch of people at a table. Okay. And in other words, all of us in our lives, we have a bunch of people at a table that we got to feed. And I call them stakeholders. Everybody's got a stake in you and your performance. If you're a parent, you know, you got a stakeholder in these kids. They need for you to show up and do stuff. If you're married, your spouse, if you're part of a community, this, that, and the other. So I think what we have to do is we got to step back. You don't win these arguments in the moment. Well, I'm going to the gym or I'm going to my therapist. Well, wait a minute. What? No, that's not, that'll go upside down very quickly. What we have to do is get a budget together of figuring out what are my responsibilities in this season. And then I'm going to decide ahead of time how much I'm going to devote to each thing. Okay. Now, once we do that, then sometimes we are in a season, and this may be exactly where you are. Sometimes we're in a season where one area of life inordinately takes up a big part of the table because we're triaging something very serious here. And it can outsize the budget in a good way. Okay. Excuse me. When I used to do a lot of inpatient treatment, a lot of people go to therapy, but who goes and checks in to a psych unit for 30 days unless there's some significant reason you need to? But when you do that, other things are going to suffer. Okay. So the first thing I would do is I would take a look at this and figure out what are the needs? I don't know what it means that you want to make some changes in your health. It may be very serious and you really do need to tell your family, I'm going to be unavailable here in some ways I used to be unavailable until I get this blood pressure down because my doctor says I'm in danger or until, whatever it is, because we're in a little bit of a warding off crisis mode here. So I think you've got to look at it in terms of asking yourself, how serious is this to warrant what I'm spending on it? You may be right that it's a huge amount of time. You may be right in that it's not a huge amount of time and they're calling it a huge amount of time, which brings me to the second point. I think you need to get another opinion. Okay. If I had a friend and I said, so how's it going? They said, really great. I've been focused on my health. I said, what are you doing? They said, well, I'm jogging, you know, 8 hours a day. And then I'm going to the gym after that. And I go, when do you see your wife or kids? And they go, well, I come in and kiss them goodnight. Well, that's not okay. But if somebody said to me, hey, I'm working on my health now, and they told me, which I talked to a guy yesterday, he's on a 75-day plan where I wouldn't want to be on this one, but two 45-minute sessions a day and drinking an insane amount of water a day. And I don't know if I forget the name of the plan. You've probably heard of it. But he's going to do it for a while. And I thought, wow, that's intense. But his wife was sitting there with us and she was going, it is. I can't believe he's doing it. But it wasn't depriving her. So get some other eyeballs on this. I wouldn't say that was crazy for what he was trying to do, but I'd say that 15 hours a day one is. So get some objective stuff about this. That would be where I would start. And God bless you for making some positive changes. And there's nothing wrong with budgeting time for yourself. It's just we got to look at the season of life we're in and what are the stakeholders demanding. I'm doing this right now myself. I have been traveling a lot in the last year, and after my surgeries and all that, I was still lacking some mobility. And um, Tori and I got together and we are talking about schedule and doing calendar planning and all that. And I said, until I get this mobility back, what I'd like to do is every day, and I'm going to every day go to a session um, for a while here until I can get my mobility back where it was pre-surgery. So I understand what you're doing. Okay, one more here. Let me see. When something is bothering my husband, he'll rarely admit to it. This leads to situations where his anger boils over because we haven't been able to diffuse it as the issue was developing. How can I persuade him to be more forthcoming with his feelings? Um, well, a couple of things. One is this state or trait? In other words, is this a state that he's in right now that he's normally a communicative guy and he's in a place in his life right now, for some reason he's kind of holding up? I would address it that way in terms of, it makes me sick because this isn't how you normally are. Usually we talk, what's going on? And I would try to find out what are the either internal or external pressures that are causing him to withdraw and shut down. And also sometimes when it is a season like that, a time like that, it can be serious. He could be depressed, and I would want to check that out and make sure he's okay. But I would come at it in an empathic way, like you, I miss you, and um, are you going through something? You used to talk to me more. What's happening? And just see if you can approach it that way. On the other side, it could be kind of like he just hasn't. It could be a trait. He just hasn't grown into this way of what a marriage demands. I mean, a marriage demands that we talk and that we're open and communicating. So when you say, and I just want to focus on a little phrase here, it says, how can you persuade him to be more forthcoming? Um, I would I would rephrase that. Um, if somebody's not forthcoming, they're holding on generally because of conflict or fear. And persuasion typically is the second or third step. If you talk to hostage negotiators who have to persuade somebody to come out of the bank and put the gun down, they don't go in and persuade. They start by understanding. If you ever listen to Chris Voss, for example, FBI hostage negotiator, he's written books on this. I talk about it in my book, Trust. The first thing is we don't persuade people until somebody's listening to us. And somebody's not listening to us until they feel like we understand. So again, I would try to approach him with empathy and understanding first. I'm not saying be enabling and invite anger and all that. I'm sure, s- uh, some people might think that. I'm not saying that. You don't do that. If he's got a problem with anger, you can still have boundaries with that and say, um, you know what, when you scream at me, it, it doesn't help, and I'm not gonna listen to that. I am concerned about you, and I'm concerned about us, and I do want to know what you're feeling, but not when you're screaming at me. And see, we can have boundaries in terms of not listening to that kind of anger and be empathic at the same time. And so I would just try to approach it that way and say, when you're upset with me, I'm totally open to hearing what it is that I did or what I can do differently. I just need to know because I want you to be happy. I want to be close to you. So just kind of start like that. If you go to boundaries.me, if you remember, the art of confrontation is a webinar I have on there. There are many, many courses on there about difficult conversations that go into more detail. It's a tough one. Okay, let's go to where we are. Brandy is calling us from Michigan. Best way to reintroduce my mother to my life. Wow. Brandy, tell me about this. Welcome to the program. Brandy,
Hello.
there you are.
Hi,
Welcome.
hi, Dr. Cloud. Thank you.
You are welcome. Tell me what I can do for you.
I will. I listen to your program a lot. I know it needs to be brief. I was sexually abused as a child. Never spoke of it my entire life until
How
3
old are
years
you
ago.
now? How old are you now?
I am 48. 48.
49. Okay.
Yeah. And I was 2.5 to 3.5 years old between that time frame that I was abused.
All right. And what's the issue now?
So I was not met with support or anything from my family. It became a very rocky thing. And My father is very toxic in my life, and we will never have a relationship again. And that caused strain with my mother to the point that we did not speak for over a year. She has recently contacted me that she wants to be back in my life, and I have allowed her in to a degree. There's already been a boundary violation, but I
What
really
does that
love
mean?
my mom, and well, we agreed that my father would be completely left out of our relationship. She wouldn't bring him up. He would be kept separate.
Was
And
he
she
the
gave me a
abuser?
message.
Was he the abuser?
He was not he was not my sexual abuser, but there were things he did to me as a child that I consider abuse. And so I have separated from him. And even into adulthood, honestly, he's been abusive to me.
Okay. So you want to have a relationship with your mother, but you want to leave him out of it.
Correct.
Why? Just curious, but have you tried to reconcile with him?
With my father,
Yeah.
no. So just, I'll tell you very, very briefly where it ended for us. The day that I called my mother, we're not allowed to talk about anything personal in our family. I knew it would make him uncomfortable, so I called my mother to talk to her about the fact that they knew I was
What do
struggling. I
you
was
what do
a
you
wreck.
mean? What, hold on a second. What do you mean you're not
Okay,
allowed to talk about anything personal? There's like a rule, like a spoken rule?
it's.
Or you
I
mean
don't know
when
that I would say it's an exact.
if you do if you a lot of times what somebody means by that is if I talk about anything personal, then I get a certain kind of goofy dysfunctional reaction. Is that what you mean?
Yes, but also, like, even as a kid and all the way through, if you bring up something personal, it is shut down very quickly. We're not talking about that, and it's met with anger.
Okay, so if you bring up something personal, they will say we're not talking about that. Talk about something else.
My dad will just get angry and he'll lash out and then he retreats and goes away. Um, my mom isn't quite as aggressive, but she doesn't like to talk about personal things. We'll put it that way.
Okay. And so no attempt to reconcile with him or get him to work on this with you?
No, when he realized that I remember the abuse, they actually had the man prosecuted. He went to prison for 25 years, but they never
Wow.
spoke a word to me about it. So they did the right thing in that. But when I shared with my mother that I remember the abuse and that's why I had so much depression and anxiety and that I was getting professional help to work through it, my father called me the next day to yell at me because I was not in church that day. And church is a big trigger for me. It's a big trauma
Wow.
response over. And so I sat down and had a long conversation with both of them and just let them know I love you. I want you in my life, but church has to be an off limit topic. That's the only thing I'm asking of you is
Oh,
that
okay.
you
So
don't call and
you
yell
did
at
make
me
an
about church.
attempt. There has been an attempt to have some sort of detente with them.
Yes, he told me
Okay.
no at that point. He would not do that to be in my life, and I've never tried since then.
Okay. All right. So what's the question? You mean this is brutal. I mean,
It
that's
is,
really
and I'm finally at a really good place in my life. And they even condemned me for seeing a professional, but when I tell you I was a wreck, like I was a wreck, at times suicidal. I could not go in a grocery store without a panic attack. Like I was a mess,
I
and I
just based on the little that you've described, I mean, I can imagine you've had to go through stuff that would make it very difficult to do a lot of life. My heart goes out to you. So
and I
what's the
actually
question now? I'm a
begged.
little pressed for
Okay,
time at
okay,
this point. So what's the
okay,
question?
okay. So I have begun to let my mother back into my life. Um, I'm not sure how to handle this going forward. How much access do I give her? How clearly do I lay out boundaries? Like, I don't know how to navigate this now.
Okay. Well, give me a specific question. That's a statement. I don't know how to navigate
Okay.
it. What is the
Okay.
question?
Um, I guess the main thing would be, how do I convey and enforce boundaries with my mother if we continue to come back into relationship?
Well, I mean, to oversimplify it, you
Mm-hmm.
you could have a little formula that says, "Here's what I want." Okay, mom, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I want in our relationship. This is what
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to do in order to have that. This is what I'm not willing to do. Okay. So
Okay.
you just get
Yeah.
clear about what the goal is and see if she wants the same goal. If you can get on the same page, want the same thing. Here's what
Mm-hmm.
you can do to accomplish that, and here's what you won't do. And then maybe
Okay.
it'll all match up. If you can say, what I will do is I'd like to meet you for lunch every week, or I'd like to, have dinner once a week, or I'd like to have a call
Mm-hmm.
twice. Or I don't know, whatever the number is. And in that,
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about some things. There are other topics that I won't talk about. Is that acceptable to you?
Mm-hmm.
So figure out the big
Yeah.
transcendent goal and figure out what you're willing to do to get that and what you're not willing to do.
Right. Right. And the seeing
And
each
then,
other is a whole different complexity because they live far away, and the only way I could see her is if he came, and that's not allowed.
well,
So
there you
it's
go. You
more,
just did number
yeah,
two. So you're thinking in the
yeah,
way that I was talking about thinking.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the way I would approach it, and
Okay,
then you adjust accordingly. If you're
okay,
not doing enough and you want to do more, you add to that list. If you're doing too much that you don't want to do that's hurtful to you, you cut back, and that's you guys negotiate a sort of a
yeah.
ceasefire.
Would it be okay if I asked you one more question
It's got to go fast. I
quickly?
got to give some other people.
Okay. If she crosses that boundary again and gives me a
You
message from my
you
father, do I just say
you
that's it?
hold on. That's inherent in
Okay.
the first one. You say, here's what I'm not willing to do. Okay. And when you set those
Uh
up,
huh.
you always say within expectations. And if that does happen, here's what I will do. Okay. I'll hang
Mhm.
up. We'll miss a week. I don't know, whatever the consequences are. But that's
Okay.
just, you don't have to figure that out then. You lay that out ahead of time.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
Brandy,
Yep.
thanks for
That
your
makes sense.
call. Sorry you've had to go through all of this, but I hope it gets better. I'm always desirous. Like, the very last verse in the Old Testament is about turning the hearts of the fathers to the hearts of the children, the hearts of the children to the hearts of the
Mhm.
fathers. And reconciliation and forgiveness are always the best thing that can happen. Sometimes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it can't happen because it takes two. And so at least you're getting that, excuse me, you're getting that started with your mom. So I hope that turns out well. Let's see. Let's go to Amy's calling us for Texas with a 15-year-old undiagnosable headaches. Amy, that's tough. Talk to me. What's happening with your son?
Hello. Hi there. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm going to say my question, give a little context. I I read, well, I'm going to give context first. Read your book, Why I Believe, and even I've been thinking of this. I am wondering how this extended illness for him, which has no apparent physical reason. We've had all the scans, the blood work. Doctors can't figure out what's going on. We've explored that it could be emotional for some reason along the way. We talked to him about it. He's a very joyful person and seems to be handling it well. But I do, after reading your book, think about how this could affect him in the future because it has limited his life a lot, or all of our family's life.
How long's it been going
Um,
on, Amy?
it's been almost a year,
A
and
year.
this is a headache that actually doesn't ever go away. There's no pain medication to help. He's not stuck in his bed, but it just never goes away. And then he has a few other symptoms on top of that.
What
Um,
it and you've
so
seen obviously neurologists.
yes, we sure have.
It's
So
brutal.
he had a illness in about 4 years ago that was considered what's called POTS, which is like a dysautonomia, and that resolved on its own. And then this started again here just 4 years later. And I just wonder if something in his body remembers, if he gets fearful to be in that state again, because he was sitting in his bed for about 5 months at age 11. And
Mm.
we just wonder if there's a component we're missing. And we do think about counseling now, but he seems to be navigating it well. And we talk to him a lot, so we don't necessarily want to cause harm by that. But then after reading your book, knowing that in the future this could affect him, should we preemptively do it, shore up some things in him that perhaps could help him for the future? So I guess my
Well,
question is, should we
let's
get
talk
him
about it.
counseling
Yeah,
for any
no,
reason?
it's a good question, but I wouldn't. I mean, as you describe it, I wouldn't just be thinking about it for the future. Um, he's having some significant life disruption right now.
Yes.
And so he's missing activities. That starts to affect how he feels about, how well he can connect with people, how grounded he is in a social network. This is an important skills building time of life and all of that. And so I certainly it helps the future whenever we're dealing stuff in the present. But even if there were no future, I would think generally speaking, why wouldn't you want to get him some help now in just dealing with this disability? I think
Okay.
that's what I would do if it were my kid. I'd,
Okay.
in addition to all the medical stuff, I would think at least to get a consult, and they're probably connected with the hospital. There's probably some support systems available there for people that have this chronic pain issue. Um, and
Okay.
I'm just assuming without knowing that, all the different medical channels have been explored. Um,
Yes, as many as we can think of, some alternative things also. Um, so I guess what I'd want to know after you saying that is, what would be a good way, so he's gonna think, yeah, this is hard, but I don't, do I need help navigating this? What is a good way to have a conversation with him? Not that we're convincing him to do it, but that might say this is a good idea. Because I know him, and I think he'll be like, I don't really need that. So
yeah.
how could I
Yeah.
address
Why
that
not?
with him?
Well, sometimes you can pose it as a we. Um, given the way that your life's being altered by this stuff, it might be good for us to, go talk to a good coach. You can call a counselor a coach,
Okay.
to
Okay.
because sometimes they have some ways of even, if this has a stress component to it, it may not be caused by that, but it certainly can exacerbate it. And, sometimes there's he's been checked out, I'm sure, for with internal medicine and endocrinology and blood sugar issues and all of that. I'm sure they've tested for all that.
We have not specifically seen an endocrinologist. Um, at this point, it's kind of like everyone gets us to another point. It's kind of this thing of
Yeah.
ruling out what could be going
You've
on.
seen, you've seen
So
an
I'm
internist. You've seen an internist as well as the neurologist.
I have not. So I need to just put this as the next thing because we do the blood work and then we do the neurology and then we try the meds. And then, so even though
Yeah.
it's been a very long year, it takes this
I'm
long. They've
sorry.
been
I
rolling this
know, and
out.
it's such a maze.
Right. So those two things,
Sometimes,
yes.
sometimes, sometimes headaches can, come from that end. It's not specifically my field. I'm not the one to be diagnosing that, but I do know that I have had a lot of experience sometimes with people who are having headaches, and there's a stress component. There's also, some hormonal and blood sugar issues going on as well, even if it's not the cause. I'd talk to an
Right.
internist probably, um,
Okay.
or an
Can, mhm.
endocrinologist about that. But obviously, you need
Okay.
some good MD to be, you know, overseeing this. But the thing you called about, to have a good psychologist, who can be y'all's sort of coach and helping him kind of organize his life around this and set some goals and stay on track. I think it's a great idea, and I'd approach it as a we. Hey, why don't we go talk to
Okay.
somebody and find the best way to fight this?
That's wonderful. Do you think
All
that a
right.
past extended illness can spring back up like this, not from physical things, but kind of like the body's remembering that other hard time?
Say it again.
Do you think his past illness at age 11, where he was confined to bed for 5 months, do you think
Oh,
something could have, like, he had some of the symptoms and he went into some type of fear and it kind of put him into this other situation, like
well, I don't
a
know.
pain fear cycle?
Yeah, I don't know what the direct line would be in him without obviously exploring that, but you're kind of describing um, something that's sort of akin to like a PTSD spectrum. PTSD and the body's ability to store and have activated states around trauma, that's a real thing. And
Yes,
and so if he were bedridden for 5 months, you read about, what happened to me in my book. Um,
yes.
there's medical stuff can be very traumatic. And until that's
Hmm.
worked through, it can affect people. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the onset of that headaches or whatever, but it certainly is he's experienced medical problems before. How that's registering to him today is probably something that it'd be good to talk about. So again, that's what a good counselor could do.
Okay.
But
Well,
I
I
can't
really
tell you
appreciate your help.
that's if that's primary or secondary or tertiary in terms of this, but eh, we'd certainly want to know if it's affecting him, by talking about it. Okay.
Right. Thank you so much. I really
Okay,
appreciate it.
Amy. Thank you, and I'm sorry you guys are going through this. It is, oh, it's hard to watch one of your children suffer. That's a tough one. All right, let's go back to the phones. We got time for probably one more here. Lisa's calling us from Texas, the good old state of Texas, where I went to school down there. Lisa, how are you?
For taking my call.
She was there. Lisa,
Hello?
hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm calling about infertility, and we've been married we're going to be 17 years this year,
How
and
how many years?
so it's going to be 17 this
17.
year.
You know what, Lisa, hold on a second.
Yeah,
Your phone is coming through a little garbled on this end. I'm gonna switch to some headphones here. See if that helps me.
yep.
Are you talking directly into the phone or are you on a speaker or something?
No, I'm talking directly into the phone. Can you hear me?
Okay. Let's try this. Hold on one second. Let's go to uh well, I thought I was going to go to headphones. See if it's plugged in. See how formal everything is around here? Okay, now talk to me.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you so much for your life's work. It has, I can't even begin to tell you how much it has helped me and my family. We have been just, going through infertility for, well, our whole marriage, but we were both in school. We were both in medical school, and we were trying to finish everything and, hopefully land a residency, and that didn't happen. So I think I called and emailed you, I think, a couple of years ago, where I wrote it and I said, I had a vision for my life, and I thought I would be this, that, and the other, and none of it happened the way that I thought it would. I had a lot of health issues and back issues, and finally ended up having back surgery. So just,
Oh my gosh.
it's an absolute miracle that both of us were able to finish medical school and get a degree, but we could not match into a residency. And then at that time, when I wrote you, you had a show or something where you answered that question and you said, your life is not what you thought it would be, but God has plans for you, and He'll change things around. And He did exactly that. We both got into technology. We both got into banking technology, and we work for one of the big banks, actually in the world. But God helped us to thrive in that and to get a career out of that. And Henry, I
Wow.
never thought that I would be satisfied with my life using my brain outside of medicine. And God did that. And He is doing it. And but one of the things is we put off having children just because we were in school and because of my health issues and everything. But about 7 years ago, we started seeing specialists, and basically they were like, you have premature ovarian failure, you're too old, your eggs are not good. So we tried IUIs and everything, and that didn't work. So we knew pretty much that the only way to have kids was to have, go through the donor egg route. But we were just not comfortable with that. We're people of deep faith, and that's we were just not comfortable with it. And so we've been praying, we've been hoping, and so if you ask us again, we're medical professionals, we know this is not going to happen. We're not in denial. We know this is not going to happen. I cannot have kids, but we believe that nothing is impossible for God. We believe that God is able, and if He wants to, He can do anything. So there is that hope that's there.
Yep.
So the question that I have is,
what's the question?
like, you talk a lot about necessary endings. And the question that I have is, when do I close the book on this?
Well, what we're closing
When do I say there's no hope? I'm done with it.
Well, what would closing the book look like, and what would it not look like?
I think if I closed the book on it, I would just be like, we're not going to have kids. We're not going to have kids, and we're going to be totally okay with that. Like, but while the book is open, there's that hope. There's that, like.
Here's what I mean by that. If the book is open, if that means that you're taking steps and you're working on the problem, it's still an open problem, right? And so you're seeking answer. That's when something is psychologically open. You follow me?
Okay.
If you're saying there are no objective steps that I can further take that would be an answer to this, then that's where you're, let's call it, you're surrendering it, okay? And you are
Okay.
going to proceed as if there's nothing that you can do, right? So what that would
Okay.
mean would be that your next steps of building a life are operating on the assumption that you want to have kids, which means then you start to look at a lot of other things that could open up a lot of very rich avenues that you're not waiting on that one to happen that are keeping you from, if that makes sense. If somebody's still waiting and trying to do this, then they're not doing other things by definition. They're not adopting. They're not getting involved in other stuff that would fill that part of themselves. There's because you're putting your hopes in something's going to work. So I would look at it
Mhm.
that way. If you're saying we've tried everything and we know objectively, unless I wake up one morning and God did something miraculous, we're going down the path of we're assuming we can't have kids. That doesn't mean that you've limited God. He might he might still do that. You could still pray about it, but
Right.
you don't
Right.
organize your life around thinking that it's going to happen. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
can,
I, I think
it's
I
sort of
think just
like trust God
emotionally.
and lock your door. You ever heard that sentence? It's
Mhm.
like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and he'll work it out, the right thing
Just
for
do
you.
both and. Okay.
Well, it's a both and, but it's a little bit different than both and in that you are surrendering it. You're not uh, holding on to it and putting all your, you know, effort and everything towards that is the way I would do it. I would say it looks like that God has closed that door. I'm still open to him
Mm.
doing something, but I'm going to go down this path as if he said no.
Okay.
At least
Okay.
in terms of
I
necessary
think some.
endings, like you pose it, that's kind of how I would think about it.
Mhm.
And sometimes he
And,
surprises us, and sometimes he shows, no, that was actually my direction for you.
right. And so I think it's that posture where I need to come to him and say, Lord, you know what you're doing, and I need to trust you in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then go have a full life,
Right.
whatever that means. However you guys, this is a brutal thing. Infertility is a brutal thing, but when people work through it and come to resolution and figure out a path, there can be a lot of fulfillment that they never dreamed of in what their lives look like without them having their own kids, whether that's adoption or involvement. And there's a thousand different ways they do this. But what I don't want you to do is being stuck for years and
Mhm.
hoping that something's going to happen when it doesn't. You could still go plan a life. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? You plan a life and then boom, you're surprised.
So, like, how
Like
do you
Sarah.
you just go and just live your life to the fullest, right? Like,
Yeah, and
um,
as if you can't have kids. What else are you going to do?
mhm. Mhm.
And
You're not
there's,
going to stop living. You're going to. Yep. Yep.
no, and I mean, is adoption on the table anywhere?
I just think that I mean, I just feel like that's the next thing that everybody asks, and I just really feel like that's a calling. Um,
That you don't feel called to.
um, right. I'm not
Well, there
until
you
this moment. Like,
go. Okay.
so.
Well, you can still just continue to ask God. God, I don't know what you want me to do. Just leave me. He
Mhm.
promises he will order our steps. So just
Mhm.
continue to seek him and go live a
Mhm.
full life as if you're connected to the reality of which you're not having kids today. So, you know, and you're not going to adopt. It doesn't really change. If you're not going to do that, it doesn't really change anything permanent. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff you could do to be involved with kids and give to kids, to help parents, foster kids. There's a million things you could do, but I'd
Mhm.
ask God. So anyway, I got to run. Sorry
Thank
about what
you.
you've been through. I know that is a very, very, very difficult road to have to go down. My heart goes out to you.
Thank,
So,
thank you
but
so
he,
much. Thank you.
okay, he will make a way to what he has for you. I do believe that. Thanks
Thank you
for,
so much. Thank you.
thanks for your call. Okay. We are at that time where I know we got some other calls. You guys are gonna hopefully call in tomorrow. I'm hoping we're gonna be here tomorrow around the same time. In the meantime, what you all can do, if you've never done it, is go to this website, boundaries.me. Boundaries.me. Go to that website. And if you're not a subscriber, check it out. We have 100 something courses on there. There's long form webinars. We have 20 something 2 hour, 2.5 hour webinars on specific topics, everything about your relational life and your clinical life and your performance life. And then we have a bunch of short courses on there where you can use them for coaching in the difficult scenarios that you go through. If you're a member, you also get a daily video tip from me in your inbox. One thing that I want you to do that day. And as I coach you every day, doing one thing, I just want you to do this one thing today. All that starts to build up. And it's a fun path to be on. So go to boundaries.me and check it out and become a subscriber and click subscribe and like on this if you're whatever platform you're on, if you've enjoyed the program today. And tune in tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll see you here.